Right, planning obligations. After the use of less energy, which I think we've talked through tonight, through sustainable design, including both passive design, things like insulation, and the supply of efficient energy and the use of renewable energy in the first instance, should all development aim to be zero carbon, which again we need to find a definition for, and this is what we've discussed with an obligation, a planning obligation, so that the degree to which you don't meet the target that's set, you would pay money to offset the degree to which you haven't met a target. It doesn't necessarily have to be a zero carbon target. It could be another target that you consider appropriate. But just any sort of ideas on the offsetting mechanism that we could use, or whether there's any support for one.
This came up on Tuesday evening in terms of planning obligations, and there was a specific question about it, particularly in relation to developments where the developer said that it was impossible to meet the renewables target, and there was a question as to whether or not then they should make a financial contribution. And I thought that there would be other ways. The gentleman in front of me has suggested this one of sort of accepting a slightly lower standard and retrofitting somewhere else so that the overall carbon gain between the two buildings would be a way of doing it. But I think my view has changed from Tuesday night to Thursday night in that if people cannot meet their renewables obligations, I do think that they should subscribe to some sort of fund because, as I think this gentleman in front of me to my left has said, 70–80% of Westminster is existing buildings, and there has to be money to encourage people by grant, by forms of support, to get on with retrofitting their buildings. And the only way that people are usually tempted to do things is if there's a bit of carrot as well as a possible bit of stick. So I think the idea of an offset fund, presumably the key issue will be how can that be done transparently so that the applicant doesn't feel in some way that they're making a payment and it's being frittered away on other council activities and so on, but that they can actually see where the real overall carbon gain is.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say that with a fund like this, where it is possible to offset somebody's fines, if you like, for not meeting an obligation, versus somebody's overachieving to a standard, it does encourage the people that are in a position to overachieve and therefore have a positive balance to actually become over-efficient, if you like, to get to zero carbon early, for example, so that they can then use that, they have a credit, if you like, that can be offset against somebody else. And I think this will become very quickly amongst developers, architects, who then realize that if we do 3 or 4 projects, one, we can really get to a very high level of sustainable design, energy efficiency, water efficiency, build up credits, which we then have to apply to, let us say, some of our listed and restricted buildings. I think the system will work well, and I would certainly be very much in favour of it.
So you're suggesting that where you've got a situation, say with the Crown Estate, they might have, you've got numerous properties to look at, and they might install far more, say, solar PV on one building than they would otherwise do, and then have their offset against something in a listed building. Or
Indeed.
Something. Right. Oh, just thank you. Yeah, the gentleman here.
There are lots of other councils that have done this, like Milton Keynes, Brighton. I'm sure you're aware of these. It's how much is the kilogram of carbon. That's going to be a really key factor to drive that. And I don't know what sort of evidence base you can use, whether you can say, so how much does it cost for a typical building in a conservation area within Westminster to fit internal insulation, and how many kilograms of carbon that saves. It's very, I don't know what sort of work you can do inside on a local basis. A second point is, how does this fund interact with the fund that's going to be asked to comply with Code for Sustainable Homes and zero carbon there? So effectively you're doubling up. You're asking for zero carbon fund from the developer, as well as the Code for Sustainable Homes asking for the same money. I don't know if that's very clear.
I think it would be the same thing. I think that Code for Sustainable Homes level might be the level that we set for it could be the level that we set, and then, for example, if you can't achieve the level that we asked for, that's when the funding would come into play. So it wouldn't be a double take, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah. If we fast forward to 2016, say your developer scheme doesn't meet zero carbon, they're likely to pay money into a community energy fund. That's one of the proposals at the moment for carbon compliance. And effectively, you're asking for the same fund. So the developer would contribute both in terms of Code for Sustainable Homes and as a planning requirement as well. So that's something worthwhile considering. Yeah. Also, the other part is how do you use that fund in terms of strategic vision? Are you allowed to build up cash for 10 years and then go on a district heating system? Is there timelines for when you have to spend that money, or can you really save the pennies and spend it on the long-term strategic vision?
Do you have any particular comment about what we should or shouldn't do? And that, I mean, that's something we raised at the other planning obligations one, and people got particular things they think that funds should or shouldn't be spent on.
The key question is how whether you fund insulation or district heating systems. There's a really difficult question there. Where's the biggest bang for your buck? Where's the biggest pound per kilogram carbon saved? Is it the district heating system option, or is it going for insulation? The slight problem with district heating is that a real long-term solution? What happens after gas?
So that just leads on to a point I'd like to make about an energy master plan in terms of how you're going to join up some of the developments in the longer term. Because as we've seen, on an individual development basis, what you can do can be quite restricted in terms of because of energy loads, and that can be increased considerably as you start multiplying up and joining up developments. So I think if you're going to have this approach, some form of energy master plan in the longer term, and how this could therefore fund that, would be beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Matthew.
Well, I just wanted to say that you have an offset fund for sustainable, for social housing, and it has built up to be quite a substantial sum of money, which is not yet spent, I mean, many millions of pounds. And so I think in some way there probably would need to be some form of timeline, because the technologies are always evolving. There's always going to be a reason why you might say, well, let's wait until this type of district heating scheme, or until hydrogen fuel cells, or whatever. And I think the various people have made points about it. You know, this is an urgent problem, and that therefore money spent early. It may, again, you know, it's a balance, because you may look back and say we spent it on the wrong technology, but unless we innovate and are prepared sometimes for the innovations to fail, and in that way you learn about the more efficient ones. So I think it would be a great pity if just the money was put aside for in 10 years' time another Pimlico district heating system. I think that would probably be the wrong thing to do, and the need is to innovate. But obviously you don't want to be spending sort of 100 quid sort of dribs and drabs. It needs to be significant in technology